Okay, I never thought I'd see the day, but Bellator is back. Bellator Belfast in the main event for the vacant light heavyweight championship is Corey Anderson finally trying to gain that Bellator World Championship against the Irish Carl Moore in the main event. Obviously, Vadim Nemkov has vacated that championship over with Bellator, as I guess he is now going towards a heavyweight run, whether that be in Bellator or in the PFL. I don't know. I'm assuming Bellator because Nemkov is not in the season, so I'd expect Nemkov and Bader coming up pretty soon. However, Corey Anderson, Carl Moore now fight for the light heavyweight title over in Bellator. And your co-main event, Patricio Pitbull, originally booked last month against both Jesus Pinedo and Gabriel Braga, will now take on Jeremy Kennedy for the featherweight championship. We'll see if Pitbull can, retain that belt and keep him moving forward for him. And then Fabian Edwards, Aaron Jeffery also on the main card as well. So Bellator is no longer naming their cards with numbers. So this would be Bellator 302. It's just Bellator Champions Series Belfast. Then they go to Paris in May, then Dublin in June, San Diego in September, and then London later that month, Chicago in October, Paris in November, and then one card on New Year's Eve. It looks like Bellator is going to be running the New Year's Eve card this year instead of the PFL. The PFL hasn't done that in a while, or I guess World Series of Fighting. Anyways, let's do it, man. 12 fights, I believe, on this card. Yeah, 12 fights on this card for Bellator. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here in the channel. Yesterday, we posted our UFC Fight Night Namajunas versus Ribas, or Ribas versus Namajunas predictions here on the channel, so go check out that video. Link is in the description down below. Starting things off first with the amateur fight on the card. Not going to try to spend too much time on these lower level fights, but this is really the only real low level fight on this card. It's Nate Kelly taking on Jordan Elliott. Expect Nate Kelly to win. He's 2-2, but he's the guy that at least PFL Europe was trying to build in his last fight, where he won an amateur fight against a guy at the time who was 1-3. He's taken on a guy in Jordan Elliott who's lost 3 fights in a row. Now, again, I don't think there's going to be anything on this fight in terms of betting or any, I don't think there's even odds on this fight because there shouldn't. It's an amateur fight. But Bellator and PFL love throwing these amateur fights on. And, again, PFL did a lot with Bajio Ali Walsh. And, Bellator is going to build up some of these guys. If you remember the name Syrian Clarke, he's been kind of, he's going to be on this card too, but he's been a guy Bellator has been building. They got him, though, when he started as a professional. Now they're doing this with some of these amateur guys. Kelly is one of those guys. Nate Kelly is not going to have a problem with Jordan Elliott here. Elliott's lost 3 fights in a row. One of them was by armbar in the first round. I would expect Kelly to get it done either in the first or the second. I'll take the second round sub, but not anticipating much. Should just be a squash match. Let's go on to the professional fights now. This is a good one. Grant Neal taking on Luke Traynor. As you see on the screen, we do these a little bit differently than the UFC. Kind of just throw out the pick right away and then, talk about it after. I'm picking Luke Traynor by decision. Now, this is a guy who's 4-1 in Bellator. He's taken on Grant Neal, who is 9-1 professionally, 8-1 in Bellator. I think Luke Traynor is just slightly better. Trainor's one loss in Bellator is to Simon Biong. He lost it by unanimous decision, and Biong's going to be a guy who will be fighting in the PFL season this year against Shoeface in his first fight in the light heavyweight division. Of course, we're talking about the former champion in Antonio Carlos Jr. But Biong has fought good guys in Bellator, and Trainor's one of them, and he beat Luke Traynor. And for Luke Traynor, his last one, a big submission victory over Sullivan Cauley, winning that one by first round sub. He gets Grant Neal, who is good and who has beat good guys as well. He had a really good fight. Well, I wouldn't say a really good fight, but he beat a guy at one point who had some hype around him, in Romero Cotton. Cotton, of course, started 6-0, then he lost back-to-back. I don't know what the future holds for him. Grant Neal got by Carl Albertson by split decision, beat Christian Edwards by unanimous decision, lost to Alex Polizzi, who's going to be fighting in the PFL season as well. He takes on the champion in his first fight, which is going to be a very tough out in Impaka Sanganai. But this should all around be a very good fight. Both these guys can get it done pretty much everywhere if they need to. Of course, Grant Neal only 1 finish on the feet so far in Bellator. He's got 3 on the ground. Luke Traynor, though, it has been the submissions that have been winning in fights recently. It's the work that he does in the ground that really, gets some success in the cage. I think Luke Traynor wins. I would expect Traynor to be a slight favorite in this fight for a good reason. All around, I do just think he is better than Grant Neal. I'm going to go with Luke Traynor to go out there and pick up the victory in the second fight of the night. Next up, Jordan Newman taking on Stephen Hill. I think this one is a little bit self-explanatory, but I'm taking Jordan Newman by sub in the first round. It makes sense. Again, Jordan Newman is an undefeated fighter, and don't get me wrong, Stephen Hill is undefeated too. He's 7-0, and he has had 2 fights in Bellator as well. but really the level of competition Stephen Hill has been fighting is not good in the Bellator cage. His first fight takes on a guy who was 8-6 at the time. The guy's now 8-8, and then his second fight, Stephen Hill beats a fighter who's 7-9, who's now 7-11. Stephen Hill has not been fighting the best guys in Bellator. They will promote him going up into this fight as an undefeated Bellator fighter and as an undefeated mixed martial artist professionally, which is true, but he hasn't been fighting the best guys. And don't get me wrong, Jordan Newman has not been fighting the best guys either, but Jordan Newman's went out there and done it 6 times so far in Bellator, and he is the hype prospect that Bellator is looking to push, right? He is the guy coming out of Rufus Sport who is going to try to go out there. He's going to try to wrestle you. He's going to try to get you to the ground. He's going to try to look for your back, look to just ground and pound you out to a victory or do something like that. I think it's going to be pretty easy for Jordan Newman in this fight. Again, all around, the wrestling is obviously going to be in his favor in this fight. For Stephen Hill, you have to try to keep this fight standing. You do not want to go to the ground game with a well-accomplished wrestler in Jordan Newman and a guy who has translated those wrestling skills into mixed martial arts as well. I like Jordan Newman pretty much, any way he wants it in this fight, at least on the ground. I think that's where he's going to go. We'll see the ever-evolving stand-up game of him, but I don't think he's going to have much trouble getting this fight down in the first place. It's going to be Jordan Newman to go out there and pick up the victory by first round submission. Next up, Abraham Babley taking on Isaiah Pinson. Should be a good fight at heavyweight, right? You got the 3-0 Babley, who has fought twice in the PFL, taken on Isaiah Pinson, who is 3-0 as well, but has fought in the PFL also. So you get 2 PFL guys now fighting on this Bellator card, which makes sense, though, because Pinson and Babley, or I guess for Babley, he's a guy who is from England. Pinson is from the States, but again, you get this fight in Northern Ireland. Makes sense, I guess. Babley's a guy, though, 2-0. He won his first fight in the PFL back in 2022 by unanimous decision, and beat Hassan Graham in his next fight by ground and pound in the first round. His other fight comes in 2021. It was against a fighter who was at the time 2-18, who's now 2-27. He's a Czechoslovakian, he's a fighter fighting out the Czech Republic. I don't know. He's got, when you look up this guy on Tapology, there's a big, yellow box that says this fighter has been found to engage in activity which does not conform to combat sports standards. So I don't put much into that first win from Babley, but he has been good since then, right? The win over Louis Sutherland is, a good win. I know Sutherland wasn't really the guy that PFL, I think, thought he was going to be, at least, because they sent him out after his first win in the Challenger Series in 2023. They sent Sutherland out to go fight in regionals. He lost, and he won another fight, but we'll see. I believe he's going to be fighting in Bellator. Yeah, he's going to be fighting in the Paris card. We'll see what we get out of Sutherland. He's probably going to lose his next fight, though. But still, Babley's fighting Isaiah Pinson, who for Pinson, 3-0 as well. His first fight against a 3-18 fighter over in Iowa. What you gonna do about that? Then wins on the Challenger Series by unanimous decision, and then wins on the PFL regular season card by split decision against Denzel Freeman. I think Babley's just been more impressive, I'll be honest with you. Out of the limited fights that we have seen out of both these guys, Babley has been the more impressive fighter. It's weird because Babley is going to be, I believe, 4 inches shorter than Isaiah Pinson in this fight, but he is going to see a 4-inch reach advantage, which is something to note, I would say. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. I just think Babley is a lot better all around, and I think he should be able to go out here and pick up the victory. Again, I was more impressed with what we saw out of Babley in his 2 fights with the PFL than what we saw at Pinson. Babley was able to go out there and finish the fight in one of those 2, and then again, the level of competition that he saw in Louis Sutherland was decent. For Pinson, the guys he fought have really not done anything of note, or who haven't actually fought since Pinson fought them. I'm taking Babley, not all that confident. I'm taking Babley to go out there and win the fight by first round knockout. I think someone's going out. I think Babley is able to do it, but again, take that with a grain of salt because you just don't know what you're going to see out of these guys because, again, very unproven. They haven't had fights. Who knows what we're going to see? But give me Babley by first round knockout. To our next one here, Nathan Kelly takes on an opponent here in Vikas Singh Ruhil, who is 12-7 from India. Kelly obviously fighting out of SBG Ireland. This is a guy who is 5-0 in combined PFL and Bellator action, taking on a 12-7 fighter, and it's just like, what are we doing here? You know who's going to win this fight. Nathan Kelly is going to win it. It's just a matter of how does he do it? Does he do it by submission? Does he do it by knockout? I'm taking the submission for Nathan Kelly. Again, Kelly is 9-2, but his first 2 losses came in his first 2 professional fights, kind of like what Jack Della Maddalena has had. He's on a 9-fight winning streak, and now, again, he is really coming into his own. Now, we said 5-0 for this guy combined in Bellator and the PFL. Well, his win in Bellator was against a guy who was 1-2 back in 2022, but in the PFL, right, they've done a good job of building Nathan Kelly. His last fight, he was in the main event. Yes, he was in the main event of the PFL Europe 4 Championships card last year. You know, a card that saw the likes of Dakota Chiva win the World Championship, Jakub Kasuba to win the championship, Brett Johns was on the card, Jacob Neto was on the card as well. And no, the main event was Nathan Kelly winning the fight by first round submission, right? So that's the level of, you know, hype or an intrigue that the PFL at least has in Kelly. Now, again, you're going to see guys switch from the PFL to Bellator all the time, right? This is just going to be a thing now because they are under one roof, right? You're going to see guys like Nathan Kelly just go over to Bellator like this. And hell, maybe in Nathan Kelly's next fight, he is on a PFL Europe card, right? You know, these guys are going to go back and forth. Like, something I found really interesting, if you look at the first fights for the PFL season next year, something that's really odd to me is that Juliana Velasquez is fighting Liz Carmouche in the first regular season fight, which makes no sense. I don't know. Again, the PFL, if they should truly go to, like, they should televise the random drawings for these fights. That's what I'd like to see. Just make it completely random. I know they kind of book guys the way they want them, right? But with Juliana Velasquez and Liz Carmouche, they've already fought twice, and Liz Carmouche beat her twice. And for Velasquez, she still hasn't fought since those 2 fights. I know, again, Carmouche has defended the championship. She fought Deanna Bennett and all that, but still, they're fighting again in the first round, and it's just like, I don't understand what's going on there. Like, I wonder what's going to happen, right? Anyways, for Nathan Kelly, and by the way, those are 2 Bellator fighters fighting in the PFL. But for Nathan Kelly, again, coming on over back to Bellator, he will have his way against Vikas Singh Ruhil. Ruhil did go on a big winning streak, but he didn't have a fight in the entire pandemic. He stopped fighting in 2020, then came back, reappeared over 3 years later, and lost to James Gonzalez on the Challenger Series for the PFL. I would expect Nathan Kelly to go out here and just absolutely dominate. Let's go on to our next one here. Clarke versus Darius Mafi in this fight. Again, this is a fight that Bellator is trying to get Clarke another victory. He is 8-0. Again, the card is in Ireland. This is what they do. Let's just be honest. This is what Bellator does sometimes. We'll see if Clarke can get on weight because he has struggled at making 145 pounds, and now this fight is going to be at 135 pounds, which I don't completely understand. Again, this is a guy in 2 of his last 3 fights, he has not made 145. His fight against Raphael Hudson, where he wins by submission in the 3rd round, he goes 4 pounds over. Then he wins 2 fights, or in his next fight, he's only a pound over, but still, or half a pound over. His next fight, he did make weight at 140, but now they're going to make him cut down to 35, which I don't know exactly whose decision that was. I just don't like it. I think it's bad. But still, he should win. It's just a matter of will he make weight or not. I don't know. He's taking on Darius Mafi here, who Tapology says fought a couple weeks ago. I don't know if that fight was canceled or not. I don't think he actually fought that fight. But he's 4-1, right? Wins over an 0-0 guy. Fought Ali Taleb back in the PFL in 2022. Lost, obviously, by submission in the first round. Won in Vita Fighting Championships against a guy who's 20-30. Beat a guy who's 0-2. Beat a guy who is 2-45, right? This is what you're going to get sometimes with Bellator cards. This is going to be all Clarke here. Again, Clarke may miss weight. That might happen, legitimately. He might not make weight for this fight, but considering it's at 135 pounds, but he should have his way. He's gonna, again, another SPG Ireland guy here. He is going to break Mafi on the ground, and it should not be all that competitive. Again, Bellator knows what they're doing by putting some of these guys in these spots, and Clarke should dominate this spot. First round sub for Clarke, and it is not close in the slightest. To our next fight here, Taufeeq Musayev versus Alfie Davis. Now, I know Taufeeq Musayev didn't, fight the way he wanted to fight in the Grand Prix, right? He wins his first fight against Sydney Outlaw in Bellator, then he comes into the Grand Prix. I was at the fight against Chablis, really weird finish. It was looked at least in the crowd, that Musayev just got hit below the belt, so fight stopped. Turned out it was actually to the body. He couldn't continue. Fight's over. Shabali ends up winning the fight by TKO. Well, Musayev has gone back to Rizin. He's won back-to-back fights, the last one being in his hometown, or his home country of Azerbaijan. Now he will be taking on Alfie Davis in his return to Bellator here. So Alfie Davis, 16-4-1. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. Wins over Guti and then win over Alan Cruz in his last fight by unanimous decision. I just think Alfie Davis is going to have an incredibly tough time dealing with a tremendous kickboxer and Tufik Musayev, a guy when he turns it on, he's very good. Now, he was struggling a little bit in Shabali with the Shabali fight, and that's the most, that's the most I've seen Tufik Musayev, not in danger, but just, not winning the fight on the feet. You look at his 2 fights in Rizin, complete domination. The win over Sydney Outlaw again puts him out in 27 seconds. Did lose to Roberto de Sousa in Rizin, but again, if you know Roberto de Sousa, a well-accomplished grappler and a BJJ guy who's going to try to get you down, he's going to try to sub you. Alfie Davis does not have the grappling prowess that Roberto de Sousa has. I know Davis can go down there, but the last time he won a fight by submission, you got to go back to the Lion Fighting Championships back in 2017, where he submitted Martin Hudson for the LFC Welterweight Championship. Luke Traynor was actually on that card as well against a guy who was 0-2 at the time. But I don't think Alfie Davis is going to be able to submit Tufik Musayev here. I don't think he's even going to be able to take him down, or at least if he does, he's not going to be able to hold him down there. I think Musayev should have his way. Musayev should strike and strike early, and I think he's going to chin Alfie Davis in this fight. I think he will. Again, you saw what he's able to do in Rizin in his last couple of fights. I think he just ran into a tough guy in Alexander Shabali, and a guy that I think a lot of people lose to in Alexander Shabali. So give me Tufik Musayev to go out there and just, win the fight on the feet. I think it's too much of a step up for Alfie Davis. I still consider Musayev to be one of these elite level guys that the Bellator lightweight division does have. So give me Musayev to win in the prelim headliner, because now we go to the main card and we start here with Ireland's own James Gallagher taking on Leandro Higo. I think people in Ireland are going to be disappointed because I think Gallagher is going to lose to Higo. So for James Gallagher, if you didn't know the story about this guy, basically, right, quick rise to fame in Bellator, right? He wins 5 fights. His first big fight, Ricky Bandejas, he goes out there and loses by head kick in the first round. Now, he's only lost 1 fight since then. It was to Patchy Mix, who is the world champion, and Patchy Mix, very good fighter. He's going to be fighting, don't know why he's fighting Magomedov again, but they're going to do that fight next month or in 2 months. I don't understand it. I think, again, Mix is probably just going to run right through him. But for James Gallagher, again, loses to Patchy Mix. His last fight, he beat James Gonzalez by split decision after 2 years off. He barely gets by Gonzalez, and now he's taking on Leandro Higo. I think Higo's going to give him a lot of problems in the ground. That's what Leandro Higo does, right? I know, again, the Danny Sabatello fight wasn't great, because Sabatello kind of just went in there and just put on the wrestling boots for 25 minutes and just, worked down there. It was not an incredibly entertaining fight, and Sabatello sometimes is not the most entertaining guy, but that's what Higo is able to go out there and do to him. That's what Sabatello is able to do to Higo. Higo bounces back, beating Nikita Milikov by guillotine choke in the second round in his last fight. He is on, his last 5 fights, he's won 4 of them though, right? And 3 of the 4 have been by sub. I think he's going to give Gallagher a lot of problems on the ground. Do I think he's going to be able to sub Gallagher? I don't know. But man, I think Higo does have the advantage down there. I think he does. And I know, again, Gallagher, a very good grappler in his own right too, but I'm not picking against Leandro Higo in this spot here. I've always thought that Gallagher was a little bit overrated. I thought he was kind of part of the Bellator hype machine here. I think Higo's going to go into enemy territory and win. It might not be a popular pick, I'm not going to lie, but I think Higo does do enough to win this fight. I just think his grappling is better here. I think, again, it's hard to pick against a guy of the jiu-jitsu level that Leandro Higo is. I just don't think Gallagher is on that level as him, and I'm going to take Higo to win. Again, could be tough with him fighting in Ireland, but still, it's Northern Ireland. But still, I think Higo goes out there and wins the fight. I'm going to take him by decision. Let's move on to our next one here. Tim Wilde taking on Manuel Sousa in this fight. We're taking Sousa to win. I don't know why this fight, honestly, has a placement that it has. I get Tim Wilde has been around. He's had 7 fights in Bellator now, and he is on a pretty big winning streak, but he's taking on a very tough out here, Manuel Sousa, who is going to get thrown straight in the deep end with this fight. This is a fight how we're going to see how good Sousa is. I'm not saying necessarily Tim Wilde's a gatekeeper for Bellator or the PFL for that at the same time, but they want to see how good Sousa is, so this is what they're going to do. They're going to give him Tim Wilde, a guy who's only lost in Bellator to Brent Primus back in 2019 by Goga Plata in the first round back then. So, right, Tim Wilde is good. Tim Wilde can strike. You saw his fight against Mike Hamill, was able to put him away in the third round, a fight that he was a dog in. He was an underdog in that fight. He ended up winning. Manuel Sousa, though, I think is going to give him problems on the feet. This is a guy who hits very hard, and when he needs to go to the ground, too, he's got grappling skills as well. Now, I think his fight against Paulo Henrique left a lot to be desired. He wins the fight by split decision. Wasn't the greatest win for him, right? That was a somewhat stacked PFL Challenger Series card, right? Elvin Espinoza was on that one, a guy that the PFL has been trying to push for a while. Sousa obviously was on the card as well, and Anthony Romero was on it too, a guy who went on to fight OAM, ended up losing the fight, but he ended up going to fight OAM on the PFL regular season last year. Manuel Sousa, again, a very all-around good fighter. He's got the power on the feet. He can get the job done on the ground, too. I'm just curious to see, again, when you see these steps up in competition. He saw that in the Paulo Henrique fight where he was just able to get by. What are we going to get in this fight against Tim Wilde? I think Sousa is able to win. I think Sousa does rise to the occasion and wins a back-and-forth fight and eventually gets it in the second round. But we will see. We will see. Again, in the lightweight division, a lot can happen. Sousa is a guy, though, he will go for it, and he is going to be active on the feet, and he will be active in trying to find something on the ground as well. Close fight for me, it really is, but ever so slightly, I'm taking Manuel Sousa to win the fight by second round TKO. Let's go on to our next one. We have got, in the middleweight division, we are down to the final three, and this is where it starts to get really good. Fabian Edwards versus Aaron Jeffery. Aaron Jeffery, again, for the longest time, I think I've said this a couple of times now with Aaron Jeffery, don't know why the UFC never took a shot on him, right? He loses to Caio Borralho in the Contender Series. Well, nobody's beat Caio Borralho just yet in the UFC or under the Zuffa banner. Jeffery comes back, wins a fight in CFFC. He defends the championship. You're thinking, okay, the UFC is going to jump on that. No, he goes on over to Bellator, beats Fabio Aguiar by second round TKO, beats Austin Vanderford by knockout in the first round, gets John Salter, loses the fight to Salter in a fight he was a minus 400 favorite in, which is a little bit concerning, and then beats Dalton Rosta in his last fight by unanimous decision. And I know, again, that Salter fight just doesn't look very good. It just doesn't. Salter retires after the fight where he beats Jeffery, and it's just, oh man, right? Like, that's a fight that you want Aaron Jeffery to win. If he beats John Salter, maybe you're looking at a title shot. However, the winner for Dalton Rosta is very good. Dalton Rosta is undefeated 8-0. He's an ATT guy. He's one of their, hyped up prospects over an American Top Team. Dalton Rosta was the guy who ended the undefeated streak of Romero Cotton as well. So you're thinking, okay, Rosta's going to take advantage of, Jeffery coming off a loss. No, Jeffery beats him by decision. Now you get Aaron Jeffery versus Fabian Edwards. Fabian Edwards is kind of at the top of the Bellator division here, right? Kind of, maybe not. He got the title shot after beating Gegard Mousasi in a fight that I didn't think he was going to win, but he beat Mousasi, and then he just gets dropped by Eblin, and, Eblin ends up finishing the fight. It's an interesting decision. I mean, I know he lost the fight, but it's just an interesting outcome, I would say. Eblin since then has had a back and forth war with Impa Kasanganay on the PFL versus Bellator card, a fight that I thought he lost. I picked him to win. I thought he lost the fight, though. Fabian Edwards went on his little run, but don't forget, again, he did lose to Austin Vanderford, who I don't think Vanderford's very good. He beats Lyoto Machida, which he's supposed to do. Machida was very old, and that was Machida's last fight. He beats Charlie Ward. He beats Gegard Mousasi. He kind of just beat a bunch of guys who are old, right? Charlie Ward's 43. Gegard Mousasi is, 40, 38. Lyoto Machida is 45 at the time, I would say. I think he was 43. He beat a lot of old guys, and now you get Aaron Jeffery, who, again, is in his prime, essentially. We're going to see how good Fabian Edwards is. I never thought Fabian Edwards was the best. I'm slightly going to take him by decision, just because that John Salter win doesn't age very well for Aaron Jeffery. But I do think both these guys are at the top of the Bellator middleweight division at this point, honestly. You might see the winner of this fight get a title shot. Bellator does not have too many top-level guys, even though now they can reach into that PFL talent pool, which they should at least. But I think, again, especially if Jeffery wins, they'll give him a title shot. But I wouldn't be surprised if Fabian Edwards gets a title shot again. With Magomed Magomedov getting another title shot at Patchy Mix, I really don't know what to expect out of out of Bellator giving guys title shots. I'm going to take Edwards to win by decision. I think his striking is good enough. I think he can stay on the outside. I think he can pick Jeffery apart, and I think he is going to be able to outpoint him to a decision. I don't know if it's going to be the most entertaining fight, I'll be honest with you. I don't think it's going to be all that great. But I think Edwards does win. I think he leaves a lot to be desired out there, but still Edwards wins the fight by decision. To the two championship fights on this card, Patricio Pitbull takes on Jeremy Kennedy. I see a lot of people split on this fight, which I get. Jeremy Kennedy, right, on 3-fight winning streak. Emmanuel Sanchez Sanchez is old. He beats Aaron Pico. It's a shoulder injury to Pico, but still. And then he beats Pedro Carvalho. I'm surprised a win over Pedro Carvalho is getting you a title shot at this point in time, but it is what it is. Originally supposed to be booked against James Gallagher on this card. Gallagher, again, has now been moved to the Higo fight because they promoted Kennedy to the World Championship fight. I understand, right? I get Pitbull might be a little bit old. He might be a little bit washed. He's 36 years old. He's just been in a lot of tough fights. This is walk number 43 for Patricio Pitbull, I do believe, right? Back-to-back losses, Sergio Pettis by decision when he tried to go down in weight, then lose the fight against Chiro Suzuki over in Ryzen. It was in July last year. It's been enough time. I think the chin is healed because he did get knocked out in that fight. It was an ambitious fight. I understand for Pitbull to go out there, fought at 155 pounds. Of course, he's the 45-pound champion. Loses to Suzuki, who hits very hard. It's a guy, he goes out there and really tries to put guys away. He's had, 2 losses in his professional career in Suzuki. That's a guy who's pretty good over there for Ryzen, right? Say what you want about Patricio Pitbull. Again, you got the grappling, you got the striking. I feel like this fight might be like the Adam Bork's fight, though, right? Where Pitbull just kind of pulls away as the fight goes on and wins it by decision. Jeremy Kennedy, again, MMA math doesn't work this way, but his only loss in Bellator is to Adam Borch, right? He lost to the Hungarian fighter in Borch. He wins 3 in a row against, staples, I would say, of the Bellator featherweight division, but not the greatest guys he can fight. Sure, he beats Aaron Pico. That's a good win. He was a huge underdog in that fight. He beats Aaron Pico. Again, Pico's shoulder injury, whatever. Carvalho, again, he's supposed to be Pedro Carvalho. But again, a win over Pedro Carvalho kind of grants you a title shot at this point in time, which is not great. Now, I'll be honest with you. I picked Pitbull to beat both Jesus Pinedo and Gabriel Braga. I just think skill for skill, he was better than those two guys. And I think skill for skill against Jeremy Kennedy, I think he's better than him too, right? Where does Jeremy Kennedy win this fight? Do you see Jeremy Kennedy knocking out Patricio Pitbull? I really don't. I don't see that happening. So I get it with Pitbull's chin, right? He's dropped in his last fight, he lost. AJ McKee was able to wobble him when they fought, but that was all the way back in 2021, and Pitbull came back and won the next fight, right? Sergio Pettis fight, I didn't like Pitbull going down 135 pounds just because it didn't make all that much sense to me, right? You used to be the 55-pound champion, you vacate that, you're still the champion at 45, but then you go down to 35 to try to take another belt. Didn't ever like that move, and I didn't, did I pick him to win that fight? I might have, just because I usually pick Pitbull to win fights. Yeah, I do, but still, where does Jeremy Kennedy win here? If Jeremy Kennedy's going to win, I don't think he's going to be able to finish Patricio Pitbull. So with that being said, Jeremy Kennedy has to outpoint Patricio Pitbull and essentially win, a majority of this fight to go out there and win the belt. I don't think he's able to do that, again, because I don't see him getting a finish. Don't see him subbing Pitbull, obviously. That's not what Jeremy Kennedy does. And I don't see him having the power to put away Pitbull in the feet. And I think Pitbull is going to be good enough on the feet to still beat Jeremy Kennedy. So with all that being said, I don't see a way that Kennedy wins the fight. I think Pitbull does retain the belt. Again, at 36 years old, he's about to turn 37 in July. Time is ticking for Pitbull with all the fights he has had, sure. I think the reign will come to an end soon, but I don't think it comes to an end here. Give me Patricio Pitbull to defend the belt and retain the belt, and still Bellator featherweight champion. On to the main event. For the Bellator Light Heavyweight Championship, Corey Anderson takes on Carl Moore. I remember when this fight was booked and I thought it was just a little bit too much for Carl Moore, but then I realized, who else does Bellator have to fight for the championship, right? Who else do they have? Yoel Romero, sure, but he just lost to Vadim Nemkov. I know he's coming off a win over Thiago Santos, which maybe grants him and warrants him a title fight. Maybe he will get the title fight next, right? Like, that might be the next fight. They might do Yoel Romero versus the winner of this fight, which, again, why not at this point, right? But who else truly does Bellator have in the light heavyweight division? They don't have many guys who are all that capable of fighting for the belt. They've got Phil Davis, okay, but Phil Davis is going to the PFL. He's going to fight Rob Wilkinson. Who did Phil Davis fight last? Oh, he lost to Corey Anderson, right? They've got Carl Moore, who I guess is 4, right? But I just don't consider Carl Moore to be the elite of the weight class. The way I see the Bellator light heavyweight division, I always thought of it: Vadim Nemkov, right? Corey Anderson, Phil Davis, huge gap. Yoel Romero, slight gap. Everybody else. Because then once you get past Yoel Romero, and we'll see, I don't know. If Yoel Romero fought Carl Moore, I think it'd be interesting. I'll just say that. I think it would be interesting. But once you get past, again, Davis, Anderson, and Nemkov, who else do you have? You've got Dovizhan Yagashiramurdov over from, he's the ACA guy. He's fighting the PFL now. He's going to fight Jacob Neto in his next fight. That's going to be a really interesting fight. You got Alex Polizzi, who's fighting Kasanganay. You've got Julius Ingliskas, who's coming off a loss to Yagshier Mirdov. Doesn't deserve a title fight. You've got Luke Traynor, who's fighting Grant Neal. You've got Sullivan Cauley, who doesn't have a fight just yet. And then you've got Grant Neal. Those are the guys that Bellator has in the light heavyweight division. It's thin. It is very thin. But honestly, that's what a lot of these weight classes are. When you look at middleweight, right? Fabian Edwards is the number 1 contender. Aaron Jeffery's number 4. Then it goes, right? It goes Evelyn, Edwards, Mousasi, Tokov, right? Which I would expect, I think, Mousasi to fight Tokov next. Then you got Dalton Roast at 5. Then you've got Douglas Lima. Then you've got Merzlativ. Then you've got Grant Neal. Then you got Romero Cotton, right? Romero Cotton's lost back-to-back fights, and he's still ranked in Bellator. It just shows you, again, the roster's thin, and that's why, again, the PFL merger makes sense. But with a lot of their top guys fighting in the PFL, where does that leave the Bellator championships? Well, at least at light heavyweight, right, it leaves you with Carl Moore and Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson should be able to dominate. I really think he's going to be able to. I think so. I just don't think Carl Moore is on that level of Corey Anderson right now. Again, I know Corey Anderson lost to Nemkov in the second fight, and he's 34. He's getting up there. Carl Moore is 32, though, right? We'll see. I don't think Anderson's going to have the dominant wrestling performance per se, because I think Carl Moore is decent enough defensively down there, but I think Anderson will look to wrestle. And then on the feet, I think Corey Anderson should be able to win this fight in parts against Carl Moore. I think, again, eventually Anderson's going to get to Carl Moore, and he's going to break Carl Moore. So give me Corey Anderson to win the fight by 3rd round TKO. Whether it be the damage he does in the ground or the damage he does in the feet, I don't care. I think, again, Anderson all around should be able to get this done. Who are the guys Carl Moore's beat? Lee Chadwick, barely beaten by split decision. He beats Carl Albertson by 2nd round sub. He beats Rozansky by unanimous decision. Beats Alex Polizzi by unanimous decision. Corey Anderson looked good in the Phil Davis fight, right? Wins a close decision. He should have won the first Nemkov fight, but again, the no decision, right? Beats Ryan Bader with the big knockout. That's not really much of Corey Anderson having a lot of power, just as Bader's chin's not what it used to be. But as a whole, man, Corey Anderson should be able to break Carl Moore. I like Corey Anderson on the field in this fight. I like him on the ground, too. All around, I think Corey Anderson's going to beat Carl Moore. And as a wise man once said, who happens to be in this fight, there are levels. And I think Corey Anderson is truly on a different level than Carl Moore at this point. So give me Corey Overtime Anderson to finally win the world championship. Corey Anderson becomes the Bellator light heavyweight champ by beating Carl Moore. All it took was Vadim Nemkov to leave the division, but still, Anderson wins, and then from there, like, seriously, where do you go in the light heavyweight division? The only available guy, I'm serious, is Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero is going to get the winner of this fight. There's nobody else. Davis is in the PFL fighting Wilkinson. Carl Moore's in this fight. Yagshier Mirdov's in the PFL. Polizzi's in the PFL. They have no other guys. It's going to be Romero next, which I get. You want to get Romero back in another title fight, I guess. I don't know. Again, he beats Thiago Santos. So Yoel Romero at the young age of, he'll be 47 when he gets his next shot at the belt. Romero at 47 years old is likely next in line for a world title fight. But still, I think it will be against Corey Anderson. Anderson wins the fight by 3rd round TKO. And folks, thank you all for watching our Bellator Champion Series Belfast predictions here on the channel. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like again if you did enjoy. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back for the next Bellator card over in France in May, and then again PFL when that boots back up, I believe in April, and then again UFC next week, Atlantic City card with Aaron Blanchfield and Manon Fiorot in the main events. Folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more, and Mamba forever.